It's time for the second round of the college football playoff. In this breakdown, we're picking a winner of the Cotton Bowl. And it's not about hype or helmets, it's about context. Ohio State versus Miami and a clash of rest versus momentum. Elite defense versus identity shift. Strip away all the noise, follow the numbers, and let's break down what's going to decide this college football playoff game. And when we're talking about the playoff, we often talk about talent, right? Because talent is what gets you to this level. But talent doesn't necessarily decide games like this. Context does. And the context surrounding the Cotton Bowl Classic tells us almost everything we need to know about how this game is going to feel even before it's played. This is not a game about fireworks. It's not a game about highlights. It's a game about control, patience, and survival. On one sideline, you have Ohio State, the defending national champions, the number 2 seed, and the most dominant defense in the country. A program built for moments just like this. But coming off a 3-week layoff and a 13-10 loss that raised some questions about their offensive rhythm. On the other side, you got Miami, a number 10 seed. No one wants to play them right now. A team that walked into Kyle Field and walked out with a 10-3 win that didn't just shock the scoreboard, it really reshaped their identity. So this game sits right at the intersection of rest versus momentum. And that tension defines everything about this matchup. The market, well, it tells the first story. Let's start where professionals always start. And that's in the market. Ohio State opened up as a 9.5 point favorite. They briefly dipped down to 8.5, and then they settled right back to where it began. That tells you something important. There was early interest in Miami, respect for what they just did to Texas A&M, but not enough conviction to force a real correction. The market believes Ohio State is the better team. But you look at the total, 42.5. That kind of tells a different story. For a game featuring Ohio State skill players and a Miami offense with Carson Beck at quarterback, that number is remarkably low. That's not casual. That's recognition that this game is going to be played within tight spaces with every possession magnified. This isn't a race. It's going to be a grind. If you want to anchor, you want an anchor point in this entire breakdown, it's going to be found with Ohio State's defense. Allowing just 8.2 points per game. The Buckeyes, they're not just good, they're historically efficient. They don't gamble, they don't chase splash plays, they sit in coverage, they compress windows, and they wait for quarterbacks to blink. And the quarterback they're facing, Carson Beck, well, he's experienced, he's productive, and he's dangerous, but he also has 10 interceptions, many of them coming when he tries to do too much. And that's exactly what Ohio State preys on. Led by Caleb Downs, playing in his 3rd straight college football playoff, this secondary understands leverage, patience, and timing. They don't get bored. They don't get reckless. Miami, they're not going to need Beck to be great to win this game, but they absolutely cannot afford for him to be careless. So let's talk about the other side of the ball. This is where it's going to determine whether Ohio State can cover or will they just survive this game. Julian Sayin, he's talented, composed, and supported by elite skill players. But this is still a quarterback who led the team to just 10 points in his last game and hasn't taken a meaningful snap in 3 weeks. You know that. I know that. Ryan Day knows that, which is why I think this offense is going to look deliberate early in this game. I would expect scripted runs. I would expect Bo Jackson to be involved immediately, not because Ohio State wants to dominate on the ground, but because they want to stabilize things. Miami's front, led by Ruben Bain Jr., it doesn't need to shut Bo Jackson down. They just need to disrupt rhythm, force second and long type situations, create hesitation. If Miami does that, Ohio State's explosiveness gets delayed, and that's how this game stays tight. But Ohio State has the single most important weapon on the entire field in Jeremiah Smith. He changes coverage without touching the ball. With Carnell Tate fully healthy, Ohio State has answers. Miami cannot double forever. Eventually, someone wins a one-on-one battle here. And I think that's where Ohio State separates. Not with volume, but with precision. Now, let's talk Miami for just a second. The most important thing Miami has done this season, it's not improving talent, it's changing philosophy. This is no longer a team chasing shootouts. They're chasing suffocation, time of possession, field position, defensive confidence. Their win over Texas A&M, it wasn't fluky. It was intentional. Miami showed the game. They slowed things down. They shortened possessions, and they trusted their defense to dictate terms. That approach will keep them in this game as well. It also explains why they're such an attractive underdog. Miami doesn't need to win this game in the first half. They need to be within reach in the fourth quarter, and they are built to do just that. And so let me tell you where I think this game will turn. Every playoff game has a hinge point. In this one, it's, I believe, going to be the third quarter. Ohio State is at its best when adjustments matter. Miami is at its most vulnerable when patience wears thin. If Miami is chasing points late, this becomes a problem. If Beck is forced into obvious passing situations, Ohio State's defense is going to close the door. That's the difference between hanging around and finishing. So here's my pick, and here's what I believe is the reality of this game. I don't think this is going to be a comfortable Ohio State win. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I believe that this is a game where Ohio State's depth, discipline, and defensive consistency eventually win out, but only after Miami forces them to prove it. I think the spread is too big on this game. I think the total in this game is begging for the under. And I think there's a clear winner. I think the margin maybe not as clear, but I think the winner is clear here. I've got a final score of Ohio State 23, Miami 16. The Buckeyes advance, Miami covers. I think the under cashes here. But it's not going to be a game about flash. It's going to be a game about control. And Ohio State controls just enough to survive and then move on from the Cotton Bowl.